What up, though? So this is gonna be kind of a different real talk. Maybe not different. If you follow my page, you follow the things I talk about. It'll be consistent with my character and my personality. Yeah, I got the windows open. I'm chilling in Hawaii. You can hear the waves crashing, the birds talking that bird talk, and everything else behind me. That'd just be something you have to deal with because it's hot. I don't want to run the AC, and I just want to chill and kind of let the breeze blow through. Especially when you live on the beach, it's kind of cool to listen to the waves crash sometimes. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what I want to talk about today. Today's topic is things that I look at in the world that just don't make no fucking sense sometimes. Right? The first thing we're going to talk about is if you've ever lived in Hawaii, not visited, but lived, spent some real time here, there is a massive, massive homeless problem here. Like, for real homeless problem. So a few weeks ago, I had the privilege of talking to one of my city council representatives about the homeless problem here where I live. And I'm not the kind of person who kind of just looks at things one sided. I try to see every side, try to see everybody's perspective, before I make a decision. I mean, hell, every so often, Tucker Carlson will have something that I actually go, yeah, I agree with that, right? So I'm open to things. And so we started talking about the homeless situation here. And uniquely in Hawaii, you are not allowed to be on the beach after 10 p.m. without a permit. So here, because the cost of living is so high, ridiculously high, oftentimes people lose their home, and while they're in between homes, they move to the beach. But if you're caught on the beach, you get a fine. Makes sense, right? You're breaking the law, makes sense. But some of these people move to the beach temporarily, they get caught, they get a fine, and the punishment for that fine grows and grows and grows exponentially until whatever that simple $50 or $70 fine is that they got is now $4 or $5,000, and now they don't have the credit or the ability to get out of that loop to get off the beach. So we're finding people to a point where they have to stay on the beach when the goal is to get them off of living on the beach. It's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Right? And talking to my city council person, that was a part of one of their program initiatives was to negotiate the fines to get them lower so people can move off the beach and get into a house, right? Because at the end of the day, what do we really want is not a bunch of homeless people on the beach. And fining them doesn't do anything because you're trying to squeeze blood from a turnip. It's just dumb. Right? Sometimes you make too many rules, and your rules create rules that destroy the intent of what you were trying to do, and that's just dumb, right? So we've talked homelessness on the beach and fines. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about the fact that convicted felons in this country, in most states, are not allowed to vote. And this is not some liberal shit that I'm just, going down on. I want you to think about it with an open mind. Because you broke the law to such an extent that a jury of your peers, which sometimes I even question that logic, right? If I am a drug dealer, then maybe the jury of my peers should be other drug dealers and not necessarily people who don't deal drugs. But that's beside the point. When you say peers, I'm thinking of people who are familiar with my lifestyle and what I do. In the military, if I break the law, I'm going to go in front of a jury of my peers, and those are other military members who live my life, understand ECMJ, and understand possibly why I made those decisions. But we're going to get away from that. You have been convicted. You've gone to prison, served your time, paid your debt to society, and you get out, and we deny you your rights as a citizen in the United States of America. We don't allow you to vote. Now, before you get all out of pocket and start screaming and freaking out, I want you to look at it from this perspective. Okay? Let's say you have a drunk driver. I mean, a person who is always drinking, always driving, right? They've been convicted a couple of times. They've had their license taken away, and they go at it again. They drink and drive. And this time, they cause someone's death, right? That's a felony conviction for drinking and driving. We will put them in prison. They will serve their time. And when they get out of prison, we will allow them to get a driver's license, purchase a vehicle, and still purchase alcohol. We literally allow them to create a scenario in which they commit the same crime over again. But that person is not allowed to vote. And let me take it to another level. Driving a vehicle is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not in the Constitution. Right? There's no constitutional amendment that says I have a right to drive. We give back this privilege after they have violated the privilege in the worst way. And a convicted felon from drinking and driving who's killed someone, who has the potential to kill someone again, does not have the right to vote. They have the right to buy a car, drink and drive again, and kill someone out of a privilege, but not a right to vote. So maybe we have that confused and backwards. Maybe we need to think about that, right, and figure that out. Next thing I want to talk about is age of consent. And before you get on some P-file stuff, some chomo stuff, listen, that is not my game, right? But here is where the question comes into play. We can clearly say that a young adult does not have the capacity to make a decision about a sexual relationship because they are too young to make that decision. Got it. Understand that. But we will also say that a young adult understands the difference between right and wrong if they have violated or hurt or murdered someone. And that those two things don't add up. You can't say yes to a sexual relationship. However, you can determine that killing someone is wrong and that you want to do it anyway. That's confusing. In my opinion, if you do not have the mental capacity to enter into a sexual relationship, you also do not have the mental capacity to understand the ramifications of what you're doing if you decide to severely injure someone or hurt someone or take their life. You have to play that as the same. You can't just choose sex, no, murder, yes. Okay? You have to kind of go, you don't have the brain capacity to understand what you're doing. And we will recognize that the brain is not fully formed until you're in your early to mid 20s, in certain situations, but we won't recognize that when it comes to criminal convictions. And I think we have to question that logic because it just does not make sense or add up to me. Right? And I kind of made a list of these things. I'm going to jump out of order because I think if I go into the next one, it's kind of weird. Let's talk politics. I know that's a dangerous subject. Right? Of course, it's a dangerous subject. But here's why it comes up for me. As a black man of a certain age, when I'm having a conversation with someone and invariably it lends itself to discussing politics, their natural assumption is that I'm this liberal Democrat. And I'm not. I'm not a conservative Republican either. I'm a human being who listens to a situation and makes an intelligent judgment. I cannot blindly follow the craziness of any political side because they all just seem to be so extreme to me. I believe that your sexual preference is your choice. I also believe that you should have the ability to own a firearm to defend your home. I also believe that not everyone should own a firearm. Okay? I kind of operate from the perspective of I want to live my life. I want to let you live your life and just don't impede on my ability to live my life and I won't impede on your ability to live your life. But politically, we're in this place where it's like my team is right, your team is wrong, no matter what they say. And I challenge you to look at the politics of your side and tell me that you believe 100% uh, in their message and their motto. And I guarantee you don't, right? You have questions. Scary thing about America is we have a constitution, we have established the three parameters of government. All of these things were created before we had political ideology. So the experiment was correct until we decided to choose sides and stand firmly on those sides, even when we know that sometimes we're wrong. It's so bad that when you really honestly digest politics and what politicians are saying, there really is no difference. There really is no difference, right? Look at the border control thing and realize that 15 years ago, Democrats said the same thing that Republicans started saying 5 years ago. And they use that to motivate you to go out and vote for them and to canonize the system. Um, there really is no two-party system. It's just people with different names doing the same thing. It's just my opinion. If you disagree, feel free, right? Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and this is a weird one. You have to kind of really open your mind and think about it. Prostitution is illegal in most states, in most counties. There are a few places where it's legal or that it wasn't made illegal, but it exists. So, legally, in most states, I cannot go out and pay someone to enter into a sexual episode with me. Okay, that makes sense. But I can, in all 50 states, go out and pay someone to have sex with someone else as long as I videotape it. I don't even have to put that videotape online and make it available for anybody else. As long as I videotape it, that's perfectly legal. And that's confusing. If you're going to say selling your body for sex is illegal, then it should always be illegal in every situation. Not legal in these things, but illegal in these things. It's confusing to me. That's always been confusing to me. Right? If you're going to make prostitution illegal, you make it illegal. It's not legal to sell your body for sex to an individual. It's also not legal to sell your body for sex that can be videotaped and displayed to multiple people. It's just weird. It's a weird law. Sexual preference and identity. That's the next thing I want to talk about. And this one is going to be, ooh, this one's going to cause some problems. When did we as a society start defining ourselves by our sexual preference? Your sexual preference is such a small part of who you really are that you choose to define yourself by it. There are so many other things that define you in this world beyond your sexual preference that you don't control, right? I'm a 46-year-old black American male. Those are two things that seriously define me. When I walk into a room, you know I am black. You know I'm older. Those are things that I cannot control, I cannot change, I cannot affect, that define how the world sees me. Now, my sexual preference is something you don't understand until I tell you. And here's the bigger picture of your sexual preference, right? And this is the big swing here. Your sexual preference has nothing to do with the majority of your life. Do you understand the only person's sexual preference in this world that should matter to me is the person I'm having sex with? It's the only person. The only person's sexual preference that matters in this world is the person I'm having sex with because I hope they prefer me. Anybody else, it doesn't matter. And it has nothing to do, very little to do with my interactions. Social interactions, maybe. Um, Interactions in the job and professional field, zero. Either you have the skills to perform the job or you don't. What you do outside of being at work, right, has nothing to do with me or my assessment of your ability to do it. So please, let's stop defining ourselves by our sexual preference. People assume that I'm a heterosexual male, and that's okay, whatever, I don't care. But it does not determine my performance in a job. It determines things in my personal life that have nothing to do with what I do to make money for the most part. Let's move on to something else. I'm going to talk about trust in media or the news. And I find this ironic because this is what I've determined that people do when it comes to the media and the news. Things that support your ideology, you believe. Things that are contrary to what you believe, you say is fake news. I think the reality is it's 50-50, and you have to look beyond a sensational headline and just do some research and kind of figure out where you really stand on things. I can't tell you how many times I get into conversations with people and they just start to regurgitate things I've heard in the news, and I go, you clearly do not look into things and try to figure out for yourself. Right? 2 points I'll bring up. One, I get a lot of people who talk about California and think California is full of these super ultra liberals. And I tell them, having grown up in California, having lived there, it's definitely not what you think it is. Okay? You can gerrymander a district well enough to create a certain demographic in voting. But when you really stop and look at the people of California, um, it's not what you think it is. You have some major population concentration areas, right? Like in LA, San Bernardino, and then up in San Francisco. And San Francisco is one of those points I really want to bring up because you will look at how super ultra liberal San Diego is. San Francisco, and never look at, it's only like 20 miles away from Oakland, and Oakland is definitely not like San Francisco. Completely different. A lot of California is very rural. You got a lot of farmers, right? And a different perspective. You have a lot of Republicans there. They just their voice gets overshadowed by gerrymandering and the larger cities. So California's not what you think. What you get on the media, what you get on the news, those are just the major uh, population areas, and it's a certain economic status that kind of moves in that window, right? And it's not just California because the same economic group in New York have that same extreme liberal kind of view. Now let's look at Florida, okay? If you've never lived in Florida, you've never been to Florida, and all you see is the news about Florida, you think you got some hardcore conservatives in Florida. And I think you do. But Florida, having bought a house there and living there, I will tell you, Florida is probably one of the most racially diverse places I have ever seen. Even more so than New York or anything else. 90% of the time when I'm home in Florida, I have no idea of the racial background of the person I'm interacting with. That's how serious it is in Florida. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into the barber shop and thought I was talking to another, you know, black man, and we're conversing, and then someone comes in and his Spanish is impeccable, and I'm like, oh, so he was Dominican or Cuban or Puerto Rican or Haitian, right? They're not Haitian, right? But there is a serious cultural diversity in Florida that you do not see if you're not from Florida. If you just watch the media headlines, you think that Florida is very, very conservative and very white, and that is definitely not the truth in Florida. Next thing I want to talk about, because I'm getting to the end of this, is car insurance. I get angry about car insurance every time I think about it. Right? So I pay you a certain amount of money every month, so that just in case something happens, you'll take care of it. And I'm okay with that. But then the moment something actually happens, you pay for it and then charge me more every month just in case something happens. Wait a minute, I was literally paying you for this situation, knowing 9 times out of 10 I wasn't going to be in this situation. But the moment this situation happens, you charge me more? It's the biggest scam ever. And what makes the scam even bigger is that the government forces me to pay you this money. And then when there's a mistake, even if it's not my fault, you charge me more money. And when you look statistically, it's not common that people have multiple car accidents unless they're just a terrible driver. It's a scam. It's the worst scam ever. Car insurance. Last thing I want to talk about, because I'm going to wrap this up, it's kind of long, it's taxes. It's tax season. Just did my taxes. Well, my wife did my taxes. She's an accountant. If I did the taxes, I would have been in jail a long time ago because I don't understand that stuff. But the way I see taxes in this country, the more you make, the more they take until a certain point. It's almost like I don't want to be successful or make any more money because the more money I make, the more taxes I pay. And if I don't figure out the calculation right in the beginning, that April 15th becomes a day when I'm giving up 2 or 3 grand. And the inverse of that is I know people who do not work. They live on welfare. They live on government subsidies. And come April 15th, and the government's giving them like six, seven, $8,000 in tax returns. I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't pay no taxes. How you getting 8 grand in tax returns? I get up every day, go to a job I may or may not like, work my ass off, and my reward is I end up owing the government at the end of the year. That is just not fair. And if you're on the other end of the spectrum, right, making way more money than me, able to afford to pay more in taxes, you pay less than me. You middle class in America, you pay more in taxes than anybody else. Man, that is just not right. I know life is not always supposed to be fair, but damn. The American dream means I should work hard and want to prosper and move up in the world. How can I dream if every time I work hard and prosper and move up in the world, you punish me through more taxes? All right, that was kind of a long rant. There's a lot of background noise. Maybe I recorded at the wrong time of the day. Planes flying by, birds whistling, ocean waves breaking. But I just had to get some things off my chest. I'm gonna in this the way that I always end it. I'm just saying, fuck out of here. Holla at you, boy.